Alrighty, guys, welcome back to Sat's Venture. Today, I've got my favorite thing about Bitcoin, John. So, we're going to be just chatting a little bit about Bitcoin, and he's been covering some of the Australian politics going on with the madness, and we'll jump a little bit into that and some other topics. So, yeah, you recently covered, there's this bloke, a senator in Australia that's saying you can't eat Bitcoin. So, what is its use case? We'll just pop this tweet up that you mentioned, but aren't you just so sick of this nonsense? Aren't you sick of all this FUD?
Yeah, man. Well, this is fun. This one came across my Twitter feed, and I was like, you always, I agree with you. Yes, on one hand, I'm sick of it, and it's stuff's annoying that people are still saying the same dumb stuff they've been saying for 15, 16 years that we've debunked a million times. But on the other hand, it's kind of fun when they say stupid stuff like that. I've always heard people say you can't live in a Bitcoin. So this, you can't eat Bitcoin, was new to me. So I was like, oh, this is fun. So I got to use that for fodder for a YouTube video. So that was that was fun.
Yeah, I find it interesting because like Australia is like built on the back of a gold rush. So like we had huge gold rushes through like the 1800s and all this and the 1900s. So to see this and this guy would probably be pro gold store as a store of value and also potentially holding as a reserve in Australia. But meanwhile, he's like, is he munching on gold? Like, I don't know. Like maybe there's something I don't know. But
That was
it's
my
just
first, yeah, that was my first joke or reaction to it. So I was like, okay, so can you eat gold? Can you eat dollars? Like,
yeah.
nowhere in his tweet does he say, oh, Australia needs more food, right? Like, he's like, oh, we need
Yeah.
energy and water and transport. And then you can't eat Bitcoin, which is just like, just a fundamental lack of understanding of what we're talking about here. It's just totally apples to oranges. There's no congruity there with the argument of we need hard assets, but you can't eat Bitcoin. It's just a fundamental
Yeah.
misunderstanding of like what Bitcoin is and why you would want to have it.
Yeah. But it's the same as like, I'm not going to go eat a fiat dollar as well. Like, I'm not going to go eat paper. So, like, the argument is just this is how dumb people are getting at this point, and they just refuse to accept Bitcoin. And I just think at this point it's complete stupidity. But he also had this quote. So, whether Bitcoin is worth $10 or 1 million, it's irrelevant if a nation can't feed itself. Like, what? This makes no sense. Like I look over in Africa, for example, like they are adopting Bitcoin at a rate better than Australia. And it's like they're adopting it so they can get fed. They're adopting Bitcoin because their dollar is so useless and it actually is helping them exponentially. So yeah, like what are your thoughts on that quote?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just a fundamental understanding of what money even is. If a Bitcoin was worth $10 million, you couldn't secure credit against it or sell it. Like, so he's literally says securing credit against hard assets is what we need, is our solution. And Bitcoin is the hardest asset in the world, but he wants to ignore it because you can't eat it. So, we say Bitcoin's a IQ test and an ego test, right? Like, and this guy clearly did not pass either one of them. But mainly it's the hubris where they just like think it's a beanie baby and they just can't to not like peel back the onion one layer and do any more research or bother to try to understand it one little bit. And he literally in one of the tweets where he said, I do understand. Somebody was like, hey, you know a lot about Bitcoin. They were sarcastically like poking at him, right? And he was like, I do know everything about Bitcoin and I know it's worthless. And you're like, I can't help you at all if you're not willing to have one iota of intellectual curiosity.
Yeah, I find it interesting that so many people think Bitcoin needs a cash flow. So, like, they compare it to real estate and they're like, well, you can't leverage it, you can't do this, you can't do that. And it's just like houses were never meant to be like that. Houses are meant to just be a shelter over your head, like just for utility purposes. And we've turned it into this huge asset class, this huge investment. And every man and his dog is trying to get his house, first house ASAP. And then they can borrow against their house, expand their real estate. And it's like, the only reason you can do that is because you're taking advantage of the fiat system, which is give me as many dollars as I want and I can chuck 5 or 10% up and then just keep rinse and repeat. And so I just think like that the only reason you can do that is because the dollar is so broken. And if you can't do that, say someone like me, I'm 21 trying to buy a house for me and my wife, I cannot get that house deposit and afford a house right now. Like it's so difficult. And even once I do get it, like my home repayments and stuff, I can barely keep up with both of our wages. So I just think this idea that Bitcoin needs a cash flow is just so wrong. I think it is competing with gold as a store of value, but it's also competing with the fiat dollar. It is better money. It has a finite supply. Like, what are your thoughts on sort of Bitcoin versus the fiat dollar in today's world? And what should Bitcoin's main focus be on right now? Maybe it's the store of value phase, or maybe it is the median of exchange phase.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, first of all, like my favorite thing about these people who throw these criticisms is that they only throw those criticisms at Bitcoin and they don't throw the same criticisms at other things. So calling Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme is very silly and strange when you have the fiat system, which literally is a Ponzi scheme. There's so much debt that the amount of dollars that exist can't pay back the debt. So the central bank has to print more dollars to pay back the debt. That's by definition a Ponzi scheme, where Bitcoin's not that at all. But they want to throw that criticism at one thing and not the other. Or they want to throw, oh, it doesn't do anything productive. They'll throw that criticism at Bitcoin, but they won't throw that criticism at gold, when it would clearly be the same criticism. Like, why would central banks hoard gold? It's not productive, doesn't produce anything, doesn't have cash flows. Like, yeah. So to throw that criticism at one thing and not the other. And like you said, the real estate, to criticize Bitcoin and not criticize real estate is a productive asset that produces, cash flows because it generates like rent or whatever. But that's the whole, like you said, the hoarding of a utility good for monetary purposes that actually prices people out of using it as a utility good. So like, to lobby these criticisms at Bitcoin and not be willing to lobby any of the same criticisms at these other assets makes no sense. Or to not bother to peel back the onion and understand, well, if that criticism is true, if I think that criticism of Bitcoin, that it doesn't produce anything, why wouldn't I lobby that same criticism at gold? And then why wouldn't I look at those two things and try to understand, well, what is it that makes that criticism true about Bitcoin and not true about gold? Or why is it not true about either or true about both? Like, that's where you have to have the intellectual curiosity to be like, why is one of these things worth something? I was born into a world where gold is worth, something. And then this Bitcoin thing came along and I decided it's not worth anything. When we're sitting here going, well, if you spend 10 minutes, literally made a video that was like 11 minutes long explaining why one of those things has value and the other one also has value. Like, it's not that hard to begin to understand it. I think I didn't exactly answer your question. So, but
Yeah, I think like now, like I still believe like gold was the best store of value we saw for thousands of years. Like any time that it entered a society, it eventually became what they used as a store of value and even as money. So like gold coins and things like that. And it replaced things like plastic beads and shells and all these very, useless things that have a huge supply and no one knows how many are going to enter that individual society. And we see like if someone is trading with these beads maybe they found or shells they found, and then you have like these guys rock up on a boat and they realized, oh, that's the currency, so I'm going to go back home, make as much of that as possible, come back, and they literally bought people with shells, so, or beads or whatever it was, and they essentially bought slaves using this very, very weak currency because they knew they could exploit the people at the time. And but what we did find, gold eventually becomes the store of value and the money in these societies. And I just think in a society now, it's getting replaced with Bitcoin. Like we have moved away from having physical store of values to digital. And so all it does is takes gold, removes the physical part of gold, and makes it so portable, divisible. Like it just improves gold. So it's not that I don't think gold was successful, because of course it was, but I just think today's age, why hold something? It's like essentially it's just a rock. Like it's durable and it's impressive and it has these things, but we don't know how much is under our feet. We don't know how much is potentially in space. Like we don't know, someone could just find, trillions of dollars of gold just right now, dump it on the market and send its price way down. And so Bitcoin, you can't really do that unless you manage to like unlock Satoshi's wallet or something and potentially try and sell that all at once. But I just think that's another area of FUD. But it's just, isn't it now time to move away from gold and time to move into digital gold? Do you agree with that?
yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, I think like you illustrated, basically, like to me, that's the best way to start understanding Bitcoin, is to understand that Bitcoin is money, and then to start understanding the history of money. So I made a video recently, and it didn't get any views, but I still was proud of it. Where basically, I thought it would be this fun sort of thought experiment to say, like, if gold was first discovered today for the very first time, would it still become valuable? Would it still be gold? Because so many people don't understand why gold is valuable at all, why it became valuable in the first place thousands of years ago. And we're just born into a world where gold is valuable, and people think it's either because it's shiny and used as jewelry, wrong. It's used in electronics, wrong. Or it's only valuable because it's always been valuable, wrong. Like, yes, those three things contribute to its value, but they don't explain why it became valuable to begin with and why it has so much value, right? Like, its industrial use cases and its jewelry use cases account for 10 to 20% of its price, right? So 80 to 90% of its price is monetary premium because it's good at being money. It's good at storing value into the future. Why is it good at being money? It has certain properties that money needs to have to store value into the future. And so, like you said, human beings, we had this historically, we've basically had a free market competition of different things as money. Like, we tried shells, we tried beads, we tried tobacco, we tried copper, we tried silver, we tried, a bunch of other stuff. Yep, rye stones and all these different things. And over a long enough period of time, harder money demonetizes weaker money. So the harder money will always suck the value out of the weaker money, like, because the weaker money can be produced more easily than the harder money, like you said, with the shells. So if one society uses shells and another uses gold, the society using gold will eventually figure out they can produce the shells more easily than they can produce the gold, and they'll go to the other society and either buy all their stuff with it, with their shells, or flood the market with it until the shells are not worth anything. That's just like the history of monies. It's not like my opinion, right? Like, that's just how it works. And so gold, that's the reason gold has value, and there's certain properties that it has. I'm not gonna like bore everybody with what those are, right? But if you understand what they are, and then you understand that gold has them, then you understand, okay, Bitcoin was, like you said, engineered to be digital money that has the properties that gold had that make it good at being money and storing value into the future. And Bitcoin has this, it solves the problems that gold had, the shortcomings that gold had, that made it essentially fail as the gold standard, because Bitcoin is better at, mostly it's better at being divisible, which doesn't, it solves problems to some degree, but the big ones it solves are, it's better at being verifiable. So the gold is, governments can just buy it all up and then stick it in Fort Knox and then not audit it, and we have no idea whether it's there, how much it is, whether the paper currency they're issuing on top of it is actually backed by the gold. We have no idea. So Bitcoin is more verifiable because we can see it on chain and know how much there is, and know whether or not there are more claims on Bitcoin. Now, this gets into a much deeper thing of whether one day there'll be more paper claims on top of Bitcoin than there are Bitcoins, which we have to obviously be careful doesn't happen. But it's more verifiable. And then the other big one is it's more portable. So that's why Bitcoin is better in a digital age, because if you just imagine, the people who's like say Bitcoin has no use case, you just say to them, just imagine that you have gold, the physical bar of gold that we know stores value, but imagine you can dematerialize that thing and send it anywhere in the world to anybody in the world in under 10 minutes. It's essentially instantaneously. And there's nobody in between. And there's a very, 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 very small fee for the sort of protection that secures your ability to make that transaction. And nobody can stop you, nobody can censor you, nobody can reverse it. And you can do it in any tiny, tiny amount, like small fractions less than a penny, or billions and billions and billions of dollars instantly to anybody in the world. Like, you just like, how is that not useful at all? You're just going to argue that has no use case. There are no humans who will value that or want to do that ever. It just purely makes no sense to say that, right?
I love this idea that because it's so divisible, and it's also, you can just send, it's so portable, you can just send it anywhere in the world instantly. It's so good for things like inheritance, or even just moving money across countries, across continents. So like, I did a video recently with an example of, say you had kids that scattered across the world, they all wanted to move away, they wanted to do their own thing, and you're this 75-year-old man that's like, all right, I want to give you my inheritance. So with Bitcoin, you could literally go, alrighty, you guys generate wallets here. I want you guys to learn self-custody or whatever to make it a bit more secure. I'm going to send you different amounts. Boom, boom, boom. Done. Instant. They can receive it. They can choose what they want to do with it. They can either hold this wealth that's just going to increase over time, or they can maybe sell it. I think you can sell it in basically all countries, um, or trade with it, whatever you want. And I think we will move into a phase where it is a lot more popular just as a medium of exchange. But even as inheritance right now, it's such like, imagine you could receive, it's basically receiving a huge gold bar over the internet instantly. You can't be confiscated. Um, and it's going to appreciate more than in gold, and it has a finite supply compared to gold. So it's just such an improvement, even in like an inheritance world. And you could compare that to, say, with gold, for example, they try and send it, it gets confiscated. Oh, mission failed. Or I've got this real estate. I want you to come back and inherit the real estate. Oh, dad, I don't want to come home. Like, you're just going to have to keep it there, or, sell it, or all these problems that you're going to have to come across. Whereas Bitcoin, it's just instant, man. Like, you could instantly inherit, like, not just tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, like potentially millions of dollars in a second over the Bitcoin network. And it's secure, it's safe, and they can learn how they want to secure. That's up to them. But it's just like such an improvement, man. Like, this is, and I think the fiat dollar right now, we're just in a little phase of history. I think the government's understood 1971. Hey, we are kind of restricted with gold. We want to be able to send wealth everywhere. We want to be able to transact not just on a local level or a country. We want to transact with the world. We want global trade. So they said this gold's really holding us back. And also, it's holding us back with how much dollars we can print. And so I think they went off the gold standard, allowed unlimited money supply essentially. But it also allowed this money that you could just send anywhere instantly, a credit-based system. It didn't have to just be paper, it didn't have to be backed by gold. And so it did open that window. But I think what do you think has actually gone wrong with the fiat dollar? And like, the idea of it sounds nice, but we've sort of used and abused it. And can you explain sort of what's monetary inflation? Is that the true inflation? Like, compare that to Bitcoin, I guess.
Yeah, man, I think the biggest thing that's gone wrong with the fiat dollar is that there's a little bait and switch that happened where, gold was money. And then they said, well, we're just going to hold the gold and we'll give you these paper coupons that are IOUs that are redeemable for gold. So you guys trade amongst yourselves with those, but just know that if you really wanted to, you could come redeem them for the gold. I mean, okay, I guess that makes sense. It's easier to carry on the paper than it is to carry on the gold, more divisible, whatever. And then slowly, like a frog boiling in a pot, slowly over time, first they started creating more pieces of paper than there was gold to back them. And then they first made it so the citizens couldn't redeem them for gold. This is in the US, I don't know exactly the history of it in Australia, right? But at first in the US, they said, no, actually, you're not allowed to hold gold. We need to hold the gold. And your gold is no longer redeemable or your paper is no longer redeemable for the gold, which they got away with for a while. But then the bigger mistake that they made was they started what Nixon in 71 did was that other countries can't redeem their dollars for gold. And he did that because other countries were starting to catch on that there were more of these paper IOUs than there was gold. And they were starting to be like, give us our gold back. And then we had to say, no, you can't have it back. Now the paper notes are no longer redeemable for the gold at all. We're just going to keep the gold. But don't worry about it. The treasuries and the US bonds and the paper are as good as gold. Don't worry about it. So they boiled us in the pot like frogs, and the paper dollars became no longer redeemable for gold. But they removed any pretense or any restraint mechanism on how many of them they can create. Now, of course, it's tightly controlled, and the Fed does very thoughtful and very tight controls on how much money they create and destroy. Well, in practice, that's not real. If a government has, Warren Buffett literally said this the other day. I mean, he didn't like say it as forcefully as I'm going to say it, but he basically said, my paraphrasing of what he said is, if governments have a money printer, they're going to use it. And that's my biggest concern about holding US dollars. It's like, yeah, we know, Warren, like, you're holding more of them than anybody, and took you long enough to figure that out. So governments can print more money than they have any backing for it, and they can debase the currency forever. And then they can make up goofy, manipulated CPI metrics that supposedly measure inflation that will tell you that inflation is not really that high. Even though, like you just said, I think the rate of monetary expansion should be used as the inflation metric, because that's what inflation is, the increase in the money supply. Now, like, the definition has like gotten kind of changed over the years. So it's it's the change in price level. Well, that's the symptom. The disease is more money in the system. The symptom is prices go up. And the other downstream one is, well, when we measure how much prices go up, we're just going to manipulate how we measure it so that you won't actually be able to tell how much they're going up. So when governments have the ability to do that, they're never going to not do it. They're never going to stop doing it. And they're going to come up with more and more reasons why they have to do it. They're going to do it more often. They're going to do it in bigger amounts. And the reasons why they do it, it's not just going to be, oh, we're at war and we need to do it. Or, oh, then it's going to be, oh, well, the banks will collapse if we don't do it. And then it'll be, oh, well, you know, the next thing is going to be, well, the economy is going to shut down if we don't do it. And then those injections of currency and liquidity have to get bigger and bigger and bigger because the overall debt level and the debt to GDP and all the currency in the system, it gets bigger and bigger. And so they need a bigger and bigger injection of money to bail out or save or, backstop the next crisis. And it just continues to get worse and worse and worse. And history also tells us, the same way it tells us hard money wins, it tells us fiat currencies don't last forever. They never have, and they never will. So us sitting and acting like I don't know when the dollar is going to fail. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but there is no fiat currency that's lasted forever. And if you can understand why it won't, because governments can't resist the temptation to create more and more money, and more money eventually inflates the currency to the point where doesn't hold its value and it's not worth anything.
Yeah, I just pulled up this little thing just to see comparing traditional fiat dollar versus Bitcoin, and you can sort of just see the supply, it's fixed, it's inflation has a low risk. We know exactly how many Bitcoins are going to be released per 10 minutes, per day, per year. We can project things into the future and just see what its supply will be. And then you sort of can compare. So I did Bitcoin 12 months ago till today here. And then we can just see over the last 12 months, it's gone up significantly. And it's just cool to see you can, I just use AI, I just plug in different figures. And so I just put 12 months against the dollar that's decreasing purchasing power is around 7%. So that's the monetary expansion at an annual basis across the US, which some years that fluctuates closer to 10 to 12. Like in COVID, we had some really bad inflation, not just over in Australia, but the US as well. And so, yeah, I think people just need to take use of AI in general and start just projecting things that they can project facts, but they can also project future things. And it's cool to see Bitcoin's growth over this 12 months breaks it down very simply. And the opportunity cost is not just how much Bitcoin's going to go up, but it's if you're using a fiat dollar, then you're losing even more because you're losing 7 to 10%, 12%, whatever it may be. So you're not only losing in your savings every time they print, but if you're not holding Bitcoin, you're losing significantly more. And you can also sort of cherry pick times. I did a video talking about I think it was 26 grand back in October 2023. And now it's nearly $110,000 again. So you can just see in an 18-month period, it just grew ridiculously. And if you were holding a dollar, you essentially lost 66% of your purchasing power if you weren't holding Bitcoin and you were just holding dollars. So that's denominating it in Bitcoin. And that I think is revaluing everything around it and repricing it. And so if you reprice things in Bitcoin, it really exposes how much you're actually losing. What are your thoughts sort of on that idea of repricing the world? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, Jeff Booth, man. I love Jeff Booth. His book right over there. He says that all the time. Bitcoin's going to reprice everything. And as long as it stays decentralized and secure, that's inevitable. And I think he's right. It is more and more people are coming to that. Like you're saying, Bitcoin is the hurdle rate essentially for an investment. It's also the thing you should be measuring your time. I was doing, just like you were on, I think, Perplexity. I was doing research for a video recently. Similar idea. There's the framing of the opportunity cost of what you're missing out by not holding Bitcoin. And I was also going to do looking back and basically saying how to give yourself a 1,400% raise without working any harder. Because if you just take if you say, you're working in 2020 and making $20 an hour, and then you look at what that $20 an hour is worth now in fiat terms, it's probably lost, depending on what country you're in, call it 25% of its value. I mean, in the US, the cumulative inflation since 2020 is officially 20 something percent, which is no way it's actually 20%, it's way higher. but CPI measured, so you lost 20% of the value of the dollars you earned in 2020, and Bitcoin has gone up like, I don't know, I think it was 1400% or something since then. So you could have given yourself a 10x raise, since then, if you just took the money that you earned in 2020 and saved it in Bitcoin. Instead of making $20 an hour, you're making 200 something dollars an hour, without working any harder. Like, and if you measure your time that way, and your energy and your salary or your wages or whatever, you start to see, like you're saying, you see like, oh, I can be, giving myself a raise without working any harder or getting a new job. And I can see the flip side, which is the opportunity cost of what I'm missing out on if I were to just held that money in dollars and watch it lose its purchasing power for over the next 5 years dramatically, and see the opportunity cost of what I missed out by not holding Bitcoin. It's like more and more people, it's inevitable that more and more people are gonna start thinking that way and doing that and looking at that and going, they always, oh, it's a tulip bubble. Like, just use your intellectual curiosity for 4 seconds. Google, what does the tulip chart look like in 1600s? It goes like this. Google, what does the Bitcoin chart look like since 2009? It goes like this. Like, one goes up and down forever, and one goes up, and every time it comes down, it keeps coming back and going up more. So, like, just ask yourself why that's different. Maybe one of these things is different than the other one.
Yeah, I love this idea that Michael Saylor says. He's like, if you worked at McDonald's right now, let's say it's 100 grand price right now, and you're only earning like $13 an hour, Bitcoin does a 10x, and then you start using it, then you've been earning $130 an hour essentially, because you can decide your own wage, because you don't actually have to sell your Bitcoin instantly, of course. You can hold it for a long period of time and choose to use it. That's your real salary. So it's pretty cool because it gives people like are working at McDonald's, that it's their first job maybe, or it's the only thing they can get. It actually gives them a chance to have potentially generational wealth, and all you don't have to do anything smart, anything crazy. All you have to do is trade your crappy dollars like the US or the Aussie dollar for the best money in the world. So it's really cool because it doesn't just benefit the rich, it benefits the poor as well. So it's like the most neutral asset and currency that you can be using, and it benefits all. It's not just, I think with a lot of other assets like real estate, for example, it really is just the rich getting richer. And to enter in, you have to have a large amount of capital or backing to start the process. Whereas with Bitcoin, like you can buy $10 or $100. I think people get caught up in trying to get 100 grand worth. But if you can just get to 0.01, 0.1 and hold that for a long period of time, like it's potentially generational wealth we're talking about. I liked your video talking about an exit strategy with crypto and Bitcoin, and a lot of people confusing the idea of trying to time the market, trying to, altcoin season, sell at the top. Like it sounds so nice on paper, but what is like a more realistic exit plan look like in Bitcoin?
Yeah, and I think this goes to what you were just saying a second ago too. To me, like that's all fiat high time preference, fiat mindset, high time preference. Like I don't blame anybody for having that mindset. We live in this fiat fishbowl where our money devalues, and so we've all become gamblers, right? Like, well, what do I do? Where do I put my money? And everybody's money's losing value so much they have no hope for the future, that they're like, oh, well, my $16 an hour job, maybe I get to $20 an hour, but I'm still not gonna be able to afford a house. So I have to throw it all into a meme coin and try to, gamble it and win the lottery tomorrow. Otherwise, I have no hope. So like, I don't blame people who have this high time preference, like fiat mindset of like, oh, like, oh, Bitcoin is boring because it's not going to do 100x this year. So I got to find a meme coin that's going to do 100x, has the potential to do 100x this year. And instead, 99.999% chance, or most people, 99.9% of people are just going to lose everything on that. And then they're just going to go, oh, well, next time I have $20, I'll try again. Just spin the roulette wheel. So I think that's where that mindset comes from. And I watched, I stumbled across like like an crypto influencer, a couple of videos of like, Bitcoin's running, and they're doing a video about like, here's how you have to have your exit plan for all your cryptos, and how to time the top so you don't leave your life-changing gains on the table when it crashes again. And I was like, all right, I'm going to make my version of this. And I kind of like tried to set it up as a little satirical thing where I teased it of like, you got to have your exit plan. So you got to have all your charts ready, and you got to have everything you're watching. And then the most important thing you got to do is you watch your bank account, And when those fiat dollars hit your bank account, you exit them for Bitcoin. You don't worry about your timing of your timing your exit of Bitcoin. If you have other altcoins, you shouldn't have those to begin with. You exit those for Bitcoin. You exit your fiat for Bitcoin. That's your exit plan. All right. It's not like when do I sell my meme coins and when do I sell my ETH and when do I sell my BTC and trade back into fiat? We've been talking this whole time about how fiat dollars don't hold their value into the future. They devalue forever.
Hey guys, I have finally found the best crypto exchange for you guys to buy and sell on. It's not just a crypto exchange, it's a brokerage service. So these guys, Caleb and Brown, I highly recommend you check them out. Use my code SATSVenture and you will be fast-tracked, a personal broker assigned to you. And so the bull run is revving up now. You want to be able to get onboarded as quick as possible and have 24/7 support. So go with these guys, use the code, and they said they would prioritize my viewers. So they're safe and secure. They've been around since 2016. They help people across the US and Australia. You get 24/7 service. So if you email them at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., needing some help with your account, they'll be straight onto it. There's no limits on depositing, withdrawing. It's free withdrawals, which is awesome for when you want to move to cold storage or to another exchange. You can buy, swap, sell, all things. So you can literally swap cryptos over if you want. Fixed fees for all trades. There's not these hidden fees. These guys are literally the best I have found. So sign up with Caleb and Brown using Sats Venture. And yeah, these guys will help you, especially if you're fresh to crypto and Bitcoin. Very good for beginners. Cheers, guys. Back to the video.
So why would you want to take hard money, which is Bitcoin, and trade it back into weak money so that you can have potentially think you're going to have more units of the weak money? While when you change your mindset about what Bitcoin is and what fiat is, you start to understand this is a Sailorism, which is like when's a good time to if you're the ship is sinking and you're on the lifeboat, when's a good time to get off the lifeboat and go back to the sinking ship? Like obviously never, right? Like there's a famous clip where the woman newscaster asked him like, you know, why don't you try to time the top and sell your Bitcoin? And he's like, if I'm in, you know, the Venezuelan Bolivar, if I'm in Venezuela and I have Bolivar and I exit them for dollars, when's a good time to exit the dollars and go back into the Venezuelan Bolivar? It's like never. Of course, you want to like take your weak money and trade it for hard money and hold on to the hard money. Like that's what you do. That's you want to acquire more Bitcoin. It's not about can I trade and you know, there's a this is actually true of the S&P 500 too, which is interesting. But Bitcoin, basically, if you look at the stats, like what it basically says, it shows you is that the vast majority of the gains come from like 10 trading days out of the year. So if you miss those 10 trading days, you basically, you know, you underperform or like you don't get nearly the gains. This is actually kind of true of the stock market too. So that's just a reason why you don't try to trade in time when you're going to get in and out, because if you miss those 10 trading days or 9 of them or 8 of them or 7 of them, the days when Bitcoin just runs that you don't know are going to happen, then you're missing them to hold on to some altcoin that's ultimately going to zero in the long run, has no real value or utility or doesn't do anything. And you thought you were going to trade in and out and like get slightly more Bitcoin out of it. And like instead you bought some altcoin that's probably going to get rugged. And you're missing out on the days when Bitcoin does finally run and do its thing. Because most days it doesn't run and do its thing. Most days it's flat and it's boring. And that's teaching you a low time preference, patience, like non-fiat mindset. And then you don't want to be sitting in a altcoin, meme coin, whatever, when Bitcoin does run and do its thing, because then you're just going to be super bummed out.
Nah, fully, I agree. I've done that as well. Like I used to be full into the altcoins and the cryptos, and it was literally just because I didn't have that much hope for the future. Like I just went, man, I'm never gonna break out. Like I'm cooked essentially. And so I was like, I might as well chuck. I literally chucked like $18,000 in some dog coin. Oh no, I chucked in. Well, it went to 18,000 anyway, and then all the way back down to $2,000. And it's just like that was enough of a wake up call, being like, bro, like you're married now, you can't be doing this. Like this is gambling. Like what? Where else can I go? And that's when I found like Bitcoin and started to make the trade from altcoins to Bitcoin and then fiat dollar to Bitcoin. And I essentially now like the closest I can, I essentially live on a Bitcoin standard now, like me and my wife. So we have next to no savings, And when I tell people that, they're just like, you're cooked. And I was like, no, but we're saving in Bitcoin. Like recently, I went to buy something off Amazon, literally didn't have the money for it, used my Strike account and bought Amazon gift cards with my Strike account. So I was using my Bitcoin. But the Bitcoin had appreciated like nearly 50% since I'd bought it. And so I'm getting those Amazon gift cards like so cheap. And I'm like, I'm suddenly just on Amazon, like I can buy whatever I want. But Bitcoin has taught me a spending habit to keep it minimum, like keep it what you need, not what you want. And it's been really good. Like me and my wife have now afforded like this beautiful little place that we're renting. Like we have nice furniture, we have nice things, we both have nice cars, and we still have a stack of Bitcoin on the side. And so if you ask me, like I think we're doing better than majority of 21-year-olds that have moved out. And I can't say it's on my own merit. Like other than studying and learning about Bitcoin, the rest was on Bitcoin. And it's just a better savings account. That's all it has been. I didn't do anything fancy or special. I don't try and day trade. I don't try and time the market. I just trade my crappy Aussie dollar that's inflating like ridiculously. And I trade it for the best money in the world. So I think people need to understand Bitcoin's not necessarily an investment. It's just money. Like you don't actually have to turn it into this huge asset class and investment. It's just going to go that way because it's so profound. I think also on top of that, like why why should someone be rewarded for putting money into a meme coin? Like there is no proof of work. You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna like with Bitcoin, it's morally sound and ethical money. You start to want to be moral and ethical. And so you learn, when I trade my time and energy, that's like my effort, my labor, my time, I should receive something that's going to hold its value into the future. Why should I just put it into something or whatever and trade from $10 to $100,000? Like, is like someone has to lose? Like, you might have won. There's also like a good Bible principle and Bible verse that I think Lawrence Lepard, is that his name? Lawrence Lepard from The
Yeah.
Big Print. He
Yeah.
mentions this a lot, and he says the Bible talks a lot about you reap what you sow. And so if you're willing to put in the effort, the time, the energy, go to work and you trade your dollars, then you should be able to get the benefit of a money that grows. And so I think it's really cool because Bitcoin as a morally sound and morally ethically sound money really does align with a lot of these biblical principles that have stuck around for thousands of years. Whereas the fiat dollar does the opposite. It is theft. It is stealing your time and energy. It is robbing you of your life. It is robbing you of like time is the most scarce thing you can give. Like you have one life. And so to take that from someone is the worst kind of robbery. And when they print dollars, they're essentially stealing your time. They're stealing your energy. And I just think Bitcoin will reward those that are willing to put in the time and the effort. And the way it rewards is that it grows 50, 60% a year and completely changes your life.
Yeah.
Oh, you go. Did you want to add
Well,
something?
yeah, I just think like to me like goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of like the pieces of FUD, like the criticisms that people throw at Bitcoin, and they don't see the fact that those criticisms apply much more to the fiat system than they do to Bitcoin. Like just what you were saying is I think is so true of some people will say well you don't deserve to make money off Bitcoin just because you found some coin and you put your money in it, and you're only making money when someone else loses because you have to sell it to some sucker tomorrow who buys it off you for more money. That's what they think is true of Bitcoin, and it's not true because they don't understand how money works. But they don't understand that the fiat system is literally built on, like you said, theft at the base layer. Like we all have to have some percentage of our purchasing power, which represents our time and energy, stolen from us for this system to keep going. And it enriches the people at the top, the people closest to the money printer. Like it's the number one thing that exacerbates wealth inequality. Like I'll say something about wealth equality online and people are like, oh, Bitcoin doesn't solve wealth inequality. And like, if you just look at the distribution of like how many people own Bitcoin, and like some people own a lot of Bitcoin and some people don't own a lot of Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. It solves the one of the biggest things that causes wealth inequality, which is the fiat money printer that pumps asset prices. First of all, people who get access to the fiat money first get to spend it and buy assets with it before it before those assets are inflated. So they get to use it to buy up all the scarce desirable assets, and the more money in the system pumps the value of all those assets. So anybody who owns assets, who's already the wealthy, get richer, and anybody who doesn't own assets just sees all prices go up relative to their savings and their earnings. So everybody who doesn't own assets just gets poorer in real terms. It's like the criticisms of what people want to say about Bitcoin. It's like, no, these are the biggest criticisms of the fiat system. Like you said, that's just built on theft at the base layer. And I do think that permeates into the other things you're talking about the way we think of our time, the way we have like this nihilism about the future, the way we feel like we have to gamble, the way we feel like everything's a zero sum game and some other guy has to lose for me to win. Like that's all negative externalities of this broken money system that we have, that we always sound like a cult. We're like, yeah, Bitcoin fixes this, because I don't know, it's hard not to believe that it does.
Yeah, I think if you told someone like 50 years ago, hey, like we have now AI doing things, we have cars and computers and technology, like we're moving towards this advanced society, but then you said, oh, but we have the worst suicide rate, the worst diabetes, the worst health, whatever, across the board. And we're essentially seeing people have absolute hopelessness for the future. And I'd almost say there's a vibe in society right now that is just depressive, like something that's like a dark cloud over society. And we put so much hope in the government that can remove the cloud. But I just think a lot of that dark cloud, I'd say more than 50% of it, is the fact that we live in a broken money. And so I don't think it can fix everything. Like it's not going to change, it's not going to change where you go after you die or anything. Like this is not, I wouldn't say it's a super spiritual thing, but I think it's going to change your lifestyle in today's life. And I think it's going to change your family's life, and it's going to strengthen families. It's going to strengthen marriage. It's going to strengthen very key traditional concepts around Australia and the US. And I think we've seen all those huge, what would you call them? Foundation blocks. Like I'd say big family, marriage, just a successful life, like the American dream, the Australian dream, that is crumbling. And we are seeing from 1971, those numbers in a negative way have just been absolutely through the roof. So we see divorce rate is more than 50% of married couples end in divorce. Now people are scared to get married. People are scared to have kids. People are scared to put their kids in education. They can't afford it. People are now having to have their partner work a job as well, even when they don't want to. Like, we're just seeing the society is just crumbling, and it's not meant to be like this. And it is literally because the money is broken. And so I think it's actually, I do think this fiat dollar is a part of a bigger evil. Like the people that are close to the money printer, do you think they have good intentions? Like these are some of the most sick and evil people. Like it is built on greed and like the temptation. Like imagine having the power to change what dollars are in the system. Like that would mess with anyone's head. And so I think people like us that are the furthest away from the printing, like we have to give up our time and energy, and they just go, well, swallow that pill, like good luck. Like we get to benefit and you get destroyed. And I just think it's time for a change. I think Bitcoin is that change. And I think with a money that has a finite supply, we can turn the ship around. Like I'm optimistic for the future. Like I'm 21, I'm optimistic for the future. I'm not so stressed about career, and I'm not so stressed about this and that. Eventually I want to have my wife at home with kids. Like I'm going back to what America was built on, and I'm doing that now because I'm opting into Bitcoin and I'm not opting into dollars. So it really is like inspirational, man. Like Bitcoin will change your perspectives on everything. And so that's why when I try and tell people, like, that's why we do these YouTube channels, it's not because we're stacking our own bags. Like it's a $2 trillion asset. I can't directly benefit from your investment. It's literally because I'm trying to open your eyes to something that can really turn your life around. So I try and tell my brothers and I try and tell my family and friends that I see that they're struggling, completely directed to the broken dollar. Like life is getting more expensive. That's why they're struggling. It's putting pressure on things like marriages. It's putting pressure on day-to-day life. And that's why we do this. This is why we do the channel. It's not for our own bags. It's not because we want to pump Bitcoin to the moon. It is literally opt in and it will benefit you. Simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with most of what you said, and the stuff about like, oh, we live in this, theoretically advanced society, or like, what would you would think would be advanced as technology improves, as productivity improves, all these things, but then we have all these negative externalities that aren't improving or that are getting worse. I agree that that should be a wake up call, and I think it is a bummer that most people just don't connect that to the money. I think, right, like I think most people just, first of all, don't people don't conceptualize that that's going to continue to get worse, right? Like that's not just like, oh, it's worse than it was now today. It's worse than it was in the past. Like the trajectory we're on because of the way that our money works. That only continues. Like those things don't fix themselves, and all of it is, oh, the government's got to solve it, or oh, it's culture war stuff, or it's like this and that. Like, oh, it's capitalism's fault. Once you discover Bitcoin, you and I think are on the same page, and we sound crazy. You can't help but keep bringing all the things back to the broken money, because to me it's like those things are all symptoms of the broken money, like you're saying. I mean, I think you see so much online, people, especially maybe like your generation, my generation, who just hate capitalism and just point the finger at capitalism and say everything is capitalism's fault. Like, I'm not saying capitalism is 100% perfect, but I think that most of the things that people think are capitalism problems are actually problems of the inflationary fiat money system, right? Like it's not just, oh, the greedy companies are raising all their prices in 2020 all together, all at the same time, all at once. Like, no, there's trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars more in the market in every country than there were in 2019, from 2020 to 2021. So like, yeah, some of the greedy corporations take advantage of that and raise prices more than they needed to or whatever. But they're not all colluding to raise prices all at once. That's a function of their inputs are going up too. So like, why? That's all because of inflation. And like you said, the government has this big red button. I don't know that they're just like fundamentally evil. There's an interesting, like, I was reading a quote from Keynes, where he talked about, basically he understood that to debauch the currency is like the surest way to destroy the society. Like a quote where he literally basically says that, or like Lenin said that, and then Keynes is agreeing with him. Yet Keynes is the modern father of inflationary fiat economics. And when he basically didn't, when they, sort of came up with this scheme to print money and, whatever, they basically, he thought it was like important to get us out of the Great Depression, but he thought like, oh, this is the thing we have to use in an emergency, and then we need to put this tool away. Like there's some truth to that, but basically it wasn't just like, oh, we should have governments have an infinite ability to print money. They think that they're doing the right thing on some level, right? But their incentives are distorted, because if they're the ones who have the big red button of the money printer and they're the ones who benefit from it, they're never gonna, there's that quote that's like, good luck getting a man to like see a problem if his wage depends on not seeing it, right? Like that's what governments and central bankers and economists and politicians, that's where they are. Like they'll never see that the or admit the monetary system we have is a problem, because they benefit from it most of anyone. So then there's the Hayek quote, which is one of my favorites, which I probably say all the time, which is like, we can't take the we can't take government out of the hands of, excuse me, we can't take money out of the hands of government by force. The only way we can do it is to slyly introduce something they can't stop. And he said that in like the 80s. And I'm like, this is unbelievably prescient, because that's what we have in 2009. It came along like it's this thing that they can't stop, and it has to be perfect in that way where they can't stop it and there's nothing they can do about it. And it's a super fun thing to just like be alive at a time where we have this thing that potentially has the ability to disintermediate the fiat money printer and take that big red button out of the hands of the government, and more and more people come along and like adopt hard money and see what happens. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it all happened very organically as well. I think they tried to squash it and they tried to ignore it. But it's interesting having someone like Trump, I'd say the most popular person in the world right now, essentially say we are potentially buying this as a Bitcoin strategic reserve. And I think it has hit someone like him or that administration so hard going, we actually can't stop it, that we're going to just have to adopt it. So if you can't beat them, join them. And I think I'm interested to see where this goes. I don't think we're at a stage where Bitcoin's going to entirely replace the US dollar. I think the US dollar finds strengths in other areas, but I think potentially they could start backing the US dollar with Bitcoin. Maybe it's like, hey, you can't print unless you can get some Bitcoin to back it up. So I don't know what world that looks like, but I am optimistic that that could be potentially where we're headed. And the fact that even if we're not, I'm still going to benefit. Like people can still decide to use it. People can still opt in regardless of what the US says. And I like that old quote, like Bitcoin doesn't need the US or Bitcoin doesn't need companies or this or that. It literally just runs on itself. And if you choose to opt in, then you'll benefit. And I guess it benefits the network as well, just with securing it, making it decentralized. And so it's just a win-win all around if you adopt. And I love that regardless of how big your bag is, like you have no more say than someone with, one Satoshi. So it's a pretty cool money, and I think people need to look into it. Do you have any advice for newcomers, people that have maybe heard about Bitcoin, slightly interested? Like where can they find you? What are some information or people that they can search? Yeah, do you just have some advice of dollar cost averaging, smash buys? Like what's some advice for some newcomers?
Yeah, I mean, the number one piece of advice is study Bitcoin. Like I generally don't tell people like buy Bitcoin, because basically what happens with Bitcoin is your stack grows in conjunction with it's the same size as your conviction, right? In my opinion, like, and if you buy it without first having conviction or first studying it, buy too much of it, especially, you're likely to sell it and panic if it drops and you don't know why it's dropping and you're worried you're losing money. Like, just know what you're getting yourself into, because right now it's young, it's nascent, and it's fiat denominated exchange rate. It can be volatile. So study it, but don't worry about the price, right? Well, everything we've talked about so far is trade weak money for hard money. When's a good time to do that? Always. Like, when's a good time to trade hard money and go back into weak money? Never. So like, you study Bitcoin, I believe you dollar cost average. Yeah, like sure, if you everybody's got to make their own decision about like, if I just came into $10,000, should I buy Bitcoin with all of it today, or should I dollar cost average? That's about studying, growing. How much conviction do you have? How much risk tolerance do you have? How worried are you going to be if the Bitcoin price drops by some large percentage tomorrow? Are you going to panic and sell, or are you gonna regret not having more to buy it? Like, those are all personal decisions where you have to make your own assessment of what's my risk tolerance, what's my time preference, what's my time horizon, etc. Of like, oh, do I need to make a large purchase in the near future? Blah blah blah, all that stuff. So everybody's like got to make their own personal decision with regards to like to that. But if you have like a lump sum or whatever. But in general, I think a good idea for most people is take an amount that's a reasonable amount for you, and a time interval that's reasonable for you, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever, and set a recurring buy to trade weak money for hard money, and just like set and forget it. And then spend the time, don't spend every day looking at the price. Like, if you own a house, you probably are lucky in some way that you can't spend every day looking at the price. You can't look at Zillow every day and go, oh, my house went up 5% or down percent. Like, you'd drive yourself crazy doing that. So think of Bitcoin like that. You don't have to look at it every day. And if it does drop, or if you're in a long downturn or in a bear market or whatever, like, you spend the time studying and growing your conviction. Like, that's what I think. I mean, if you're not interested in Bitcoin and you don't care to do that, that's fine too. But just have conviction and know what you're buying and the fundamentals of like what you're trading one thing for the other, and then just like head down, mine fiat, trade it, which is weak money, trade it for hard money, and like the result will take care of itself. Like, I just think Bitcoin teaches you that patience and that low time preference. If you have any interest at all in learning more about it, like, definitely do that, because I think the more you understand Bitcoin and the more you know about it, the more you can have conviction in what you're doing, and not panic and sell it back for fiat because it dropped temporarily. So I don't know, that's just kind of like how I go about it. I mean, yeah, I try to make like educational videos on my channel, and along with like I sort of think of my channel as like, if you don't give two hoots about crypto or Bitcoin or don't care about it at all, then obviously it's not for you. And if you're like, 5+ years into Bitcoin, you probably know more than me, so my channel's probably not for you. But if you're anywhere into like crypto curious zone of like the first 4 to 5 years of your Bitcoin journey, I think I make, I might have perspective on like answering, questions that people have, trying to make videos about that type of thing. Don't buy altcoins because they're vaporware and they're all worthless. So don't play around over there. Like we said before, that's all gambling. So just know that if you're doing that, you're gambling. You might as well buy a lottery ticket and, study Bitcoin. Like there's some great resources like, to better understand some of the stuff you and I talked about. There's like this "What's the Problem" video with this guy Joe Bryan, who I did an interview with. He made like what I think is sort of the new like 30 minutes condensed, like help a very very early beginner understand like what's this Bitcoin thing, why should I care, why it's not a solution in search of a problem, it's a solution to a problem. So that's a great one. And then there's obviously like the Bitcoin Standard and some classics, but there's just so much Bitcoin knowledge and information out there, for anybody who's like sort of anywhere on the spectrum of their Bitcoin journey. Yeah.
Awesome. Just to finish up, what's a short summary of why you got into Bitcoin? What was your conviction? What was your short story to finding it? And yeah, what's made you a crazy Bitcoiner?
Yeah, man. I think it's a spectrum. Like it's a journey. Like I discovered it in 2014, which seems like a long time ago. Of course, I was an idiot. I didn't understand it. I didn't hold on to it since then. Like I don't have, uh, Bitcoin that I bought at $400 that I still have today. Like, I wish, but I, was on Reddit, like, what's the next coin? Filecoin and Litecoin and blah blah blah. Like I didn't know what I was doing, and then I don't know, some point, a couple, not long thereafter, I was like, oh, I need this, $120. I'm selling this stupid Bitcoin thing, right? So like it took a while to like keep coming back to it, right? And being like, well, this thing's back again. Like I thought that was dead. Oh, it's not dead. Oh, why isn't it dead? Oh, these other coins that everybody said were the next thing aren't the next thing. Why are those dead and Bitcoin's not? Just this slow like, oh, keep coming back to it. And then wait a second, why is it have any value? And like we talked about at the beginning, the people who just dismiss it out of hand and have no intellectual curiosity to understand why it might be different or why it's still been around for 16 years, or why so many people are sort of this crazy culty fanatics about it. Like ask those questions. Like the answers are out there, like that was my journey. And I stumbled across like so I've said this before, but like I'm not a Tucker Carlson guy, but I happened to stumble across this interview he did with Michael Saylor, and the stuff Saylor was saying in there, like I was just like, what is this guy talking about? Like kind of blows your mind, the way he goes on these crazy energy analogies and stuff. Some people think that's, not helpful because it's too abstract, but it piqued my curiosity where I was like, what? He's talking about economic battery and time energy and cyber hornets. Like what's going on? And that prompted me to have more curiosity and really start to dig in more and more. And then it's like, hours and hours of Saylor on, Robert Breedlove, where they're talking about the history of money and all these things. And then just like going further and further and further down the rabbit hole. And then wanting to like understand all the pieces of FUD. Like we talked about a number of them, but it's like when people say Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme, it's like, I want to know, well, are they right? Why do they think that? Well, oh no, they're wrong, but why are they wrong? How do you articulate why they're wrong? And why Bitcoin is not a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme, and what they're misunderstanding about it. And that all led to like, yeah, me wanting to talk more about it and do my own sort of explainer, type stuff about it. And I have my own channel where, Bitcoin I think is the coolest hobby because is, it's a hobby that if you're interested in having this as a hobby, just like it has the potential to make you fabulously rich, which is cool. Like rather than, a lot of other hobbies, skateboarding or whatever, you're like not going to get rich. But that's just like a funny side effect of being into Bitcoin. You're like, oh, this hobby of mine actually like makes me money, which is cool. But the other one is like, as you like get more and more into it, you want to talk about it more and tell people, and like you said, try to kind of help other people come to the realization of like, here's why we need hard money and why the things about our system now that are broken. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thanks for coming on, John. I really appreciate it. People can go find you at My Favorite Thing About Bitcoin on YouTube. Do you have any other plugins you want to chuck in before we wrap up?
Yeah, man, YouTube is the big one. I mean, I'm also on like on X and on TikTok because I think we need more Bitcoin maxi presence on TikTok because it's all XRP shills and crypto pumpers. but but X is the other one. I'm the at the Sat Daddy on X, which like I'm kind of embarrassed about my my handle because I think it's kind of goofy. I thought it was funny when I made it, but now I'm like, oh, every day I'm like, oh, maybe I should change it.
No, awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. Awesome conversation. You obviously know a lot about Bitcoin, and appreciate you coming on, bro.
Yeah, thanks, Joey. I appreciate you having me on, man. This was fun.
Awesome. Cheers, guys.